Just trying to get our Facebook stream going here. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our Michigan Music Alliance B-side session on building a team. Just getting our Facebook stream going. Bear with me just one more second. Looks like we are good to go. All right, my name is Bob Wallace. I'm very excited to be moderating tonight's panel. We have a tremendous group of panelists for you, and we're going to have them introduce themselves here in just a minute. I want to give a big shout out to the Michigan Music Alliance, and particularly Elle Lively, who has done so much to make Michigan Music Alliance a reality, and all the good things that it's doing for not only the Michigan music scene, but I think as this has gone virtual, helping out people all over the place. So we really appreciate all that they are doing, and Elle in particular, to give back. And so thank you very much to them for putting these events together. This is the third year of the B-side sessions, and tonight's topic, as we mentioned, is building a team. And we're excited to talk about that. We'll be watching for your questions in the chat window and in the on the Facebook stream as well. And so without further ado, we'll go around the table here, and if you would each tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, but also let's start with a question, which is, when is it time to start thinking about building out your team? If you're an independent artist or a small group, when is it time to think about that? Holly, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Okay, my name is Holly Moore. I'm the CEO and owner of Holiday Management. I started Holiday Management a couple of years ago as an independent talent manager, and it's grown over the past couple of years. It's been awesome. So in reference to this question, I think the best time to start building out a team is as a DIY artist when things become maybe too much to handle. You have too much on your plate and you're like, wow, I'm overwhelmed by everything. One of the good phrases that I kind of coined from a good friend of mine in the industry is artists tend to be a ship, and there's different elements to a ship. And one of the biggest things is finding out who works at different parts on that ship and who's going to be the most impactful for a DIY artist. And when that ship starts to get to where you can't crew it by yourself anymore, you definitely want to pull in some team members. So I would say when things start to get overwhelming and you have so many opportunities coming your way or so many things that you're working on that it just becomes unrealistic for you as a DIY artist to kind of do it all yourself.
Great, thanks so much. Steve, how about you?
I'm Steve Foxbury. I have Yellow Couch Studio and Management. My background is as a singer-songwriter, and I moved into management about 8 years ago and have been doing it ever since. And I would largely agree with what Holly just said. It's, you need a manager when you have stuff to manage. That said, there are probably times prior to that when it's helpful to, you can reach out to managers, and for the most part, most would be happy to spend an hour with you and talk to you about where you are and some things that you could be doing at this point in your career to keep things moving along. And in some instances, like if you're releasing a record, some managers also do consultancy work, and you could bring them on to help you shepherd your record release process, things like that. But in terms of adding somebody on full-time, be it a manager or a booking agent, both of those you really have to be in a spot where those things are needed in a full-time capacity.
Great. Jay, how about you?
My name is Jay Gilbert. I run a company called Label Logic out of Los Angeles, and we handle label and artist services. We're basically the label infrastructure for managers primarily and some artists. And it's, developing artists that you've never heard of all the way to people filling up arenas. Your question, about the team, I agree with everything that Holly and Steven said. I think that's spot on. I would only add to that I think that you start from day one forming what we call your street team. And your street team can be your boyfriend, girlfriend, it can be anything. You surround yourself with evangelists, people who get up every morning and think, well, what can I do for this artist?
Right.
And I think that's really key. And the other thing, I think I want to touch on something Steven said. There's a great quote from my old mentor and boss. He said, no one wants to give you a job, but everybody wants to give you advice. And so what I take from that is, if you're not at the level where you need an artist manager, a business lawyer, a booking agent, tour manager, if you're not at that level yet, you can still surround yourself with a great street team of people as you grow.
Sure.
But then do what Steven mentions, like reach out to people, online. You'd be surprised how many people, if you don't ask them for a job and just ask them for advice, they're more apt to do that. And I know that it works with me, and I'm sure it's working with Holly and Steven. If someone reaches out to you and says, hey, I need just a little bit of advice about this, I'm starting out in the business. Yeah, we're going to take the time to do that.
Yep. That's great. Yeah. And tremendous that you all are willing to do that. I think we've certainly felt that spirit among the Michigan Music Alliance members too, that there's a real sense of, cooperation more than competition, which has been wonderful. And I think it's a great point about building that street team, or really anybody that's helping you, right? I think often artists think about going straight to, I need a manager, whatever, right? But I'm thinking more broadly about this, really, like it's anybody that you're bringing on to help you. And so, often it's, I think any sort of adding team in any industry, you're thinking about, it's either expertise or contacts or something that I need that I don't have, so I need to go get that. Or maybe I just want some extra capacity, or I want some help doing something I don't think I'm very good at, or I don't like doing. So I think, would you agree those are kind of the two times you do this? It's I either need capacity or I need expertise, right?
Yeah, it depends on your needs. Everybody has different needs, right? Somebody may not necessarily need a manager right away. The other thing I think we need to touch on is there's so many things that you can do yourself until you get to a point where you can't, right? To Holly's point. So, you may be good at social media and may not need a social media manager. You may be really good at photography or videography, and you can edit and do those things yourselves. We know so many of the bands coming up today, they're not a one-trick pony. They do the writing, recording, touring, but they also do all these other things, even working things to a smaller degree at radio, maybe with a Play MPE blast, or maybe, helping to book the tour. There's all sorts of different skill sets there. So it's not a black or white kind of thing where you reach a certain point and now you need this team. I think you start with that street team and then you gradually build that expertise until you really need a professional. You need somebody, and you can afford one.
Right.
And it does happen. I mean, at this point, I try to find people who are further along. But when I got into management, I did because I found a young songwriter who sort of reminded me of what I was going through at the time. And I had some experience and thought, maybe I can save him a couple of years of spinning his wheels. So I came on as a brand new manager, and he was an artist at the starting line. So we both sort of figured things out together. But, it really just depends on who you're looking for and what your needs are.
Yeah. When do you think that for all of you, when do you think is that, how do I know? So if I'm an independent artist, or again, a small group, or maybe I've got a couple team members already, how do I know when it's time to go look for that next team member?
It's for me, I would say when you can reach a point where you're doing this full time, that's a really good place to start to attract people. If you're not doing it full time, it's really difficult to bring other people on, just because what you need to do to reach that point is pretty tricky. And if you haven't sorted that out on your own, then that can be tough.
Yeah.
But I love to see somebody who's figured out how to tour, who has, has had understand. What's really nice is if you've had somebody who's been doing it long enough that they sort of understand what they're getting when they bring these people on. That's really helpful. So they understand what the role is and what the work is. That can help an awful lot.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I would say, I started out very much like Steven with my first artist, very much like hand in hand, we're learning this together, so to speak. But I've learned over the past couple of years that with artists, they all come with different needs and different goals. But I think one of the biggest things I've seen is artists who maybe do have a handle on a lot of different things. They're a jack of all trades, so to speak, and can handle certain elements and are just looking for that next stepping stone. And they maybe have the contact, or they have a lot of the things in place and just aren't sure about how to execute those things. That's something we see a lot on our end of things. It's like they have all the materials, how do they execute it? And I think that's definitely something that we look for in artists, myself and my team, is they're ready to level up, so to speak. So that's when they find us, or at least come through us, and we help them kind of get that sorted out.
Yeah, I think that revenue has something to do with it. Stephen mentioned full time. Typically that is concurrent with having revenue come in. And there's certain positions that you can have your super fans help you out with, and your street team and your relatives. But then you get to a point where you need a professional, right? You need someone who has experience. We were joking around the other day that, when you have surgery, you want a surgeon who's done 1,000 of those operations, not 3, right? So, and when it comes to things like, artist management, you really want someone who's got some experience, because they've done things and failed at things and succeeded at things, and that knowledge is only going to help you. Same with like a music business attorney, which is kind of that second step, that you really need someone that knows the business, because that can really help you. A booking agent that's experienced. You can book shows yourself. Your friends, and I'm sure your street team, can help you book some shows, but you're going to get to a point where you're going to want to route a tour, and you're going to want it done the right way. And you need a pro to do that. And then the other thing, we were talking about Elle earlier, you want a good tour manager. You want someone, and that role is so much about problem solving. You can take people who don't have a ton of experience if they're really good, smart, able problem solvers, and they'll learn. But we typically like to have people who have done a tour or two before we hire them.
Sure.
And I would say on the booking agent piece, that's when I talk to artists, that's typically the first thing that they talk about wanting, because booking shows is brutal. It's 10 emails just to get to know.
Right.
And so, I understand that you want a booking agent, but keep in mind that they're working for 10% of what you're making. And if you're walking out with $35 at the end of the night, there's not much incentive for a booking agent to get involved there.
Right.
Good point.
So I think that you will honestly, like I've worked with artists who could zigzag the country, who had some international exposure, and it took us an awful long time. Like we've had label deals before we've had booking agents, and so it's a really tricky piece of the puzzle, and even more so now, because every agent that I work with is just in tatters over the last couple of years, from booking, canceling, rebooking, and being at a point now where it's sort of a mixed bag of, well, some shows are going and some shows aren't going for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes venues are canceling now. Sometimes artists aren't comfortable playing for whatever reason. And so it's a really tricky time to be out there scouting for people, especially in that realm.
Yeah, and fair to say that folks that have had enough sort of critical mass to stick around through this very difficult COVID period, I suspect have a lot on their plate already. And so you're talking about folks that that are likely very busy and juggling a lot of things, I think, if they've made it through, right? So yeah. It's a great point, and I want to come back to a little bit of what some things you both mentioned about what are you looking for, but also what are they looking for if you're going out to a pro. But I want to mention too, Eric from Music City, Eric Griffin from Music City Council, is in our chat this evening. Another one of our panelists will be mentioning some comments from him. And he made a comment that he agreed one of the best things to do is seek out help when your business gets in the way of your creative life, echoing some of the points that you all are making. So speaking of the chat, by the way, if you're joining us on Zoom, you're welcome to ask questions in the chat. We'll try to keep an eye on that. If you're joining us on Facebook, we'll try to keep an eye on the Facebook comments as well. So please do ask questions if you have them. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about, whether I actually would love your opinion on whether you're asking, certain people to do it, like you were saying, Jay. Maybe you're asking somebody who hasn't done this before. You're asking a friend or whatever. What are you looking for? But then if you're going out to a professional or a professional firm, what are some of the things that you may want to be looking for as an artist? I mean, you mentioned experience, of course, but I mean, I sense probably some chemistry, like something. There's probably more to it than just have you done this before? Okay, let's talk. Right.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of asking around. Steve and I belong to this artist management collective, and we ask each other, who are you using for video editing? Who are you using for your graphic designer? Who's a good publicist for this genre or mood? And I think that's really important, to lean on your network, lean on your friends and say, you know what, I'm at this stage of this artist's career where we need help in these areas. Who have you worked with that's good? And go with people who have a good reputation. I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, agreed. It's interesting. I got a call today from a person who I've known for a while. He books a really great house show series, but he's also a college professor and also has a business background and has done some really cool things. And there's a band that he's worked with for a while, and they've just moved on from their past manager, and they reached out to him and they said, hey, we really like you, and we'd actually like you to manage us. And he called me. He's like, so I'm interested in doing this. I love these guys. I've been on the promoter side for a long time, but there are a lot of things I really don't know about becoming an artist manager. And so, I spoke with him for about an hour, and this is a band, and also he knows enough that he was saying, like, look, if I get to talking to them and I want to make it very clear that this is where I'm at with this thing, and if they just want me to help them find another manager, then I would be happy to do that. And this is a band who, based on, how they're able to tour, what their streaming numbers look like, what their social numbers look like, they are absolutely ready for management. They have a booking agent in place, a reputable booking agent. So it's a really attractive project, but there is something to be said for just finding somebody. My personal motto is follow enthusiasm, and I think that if you've got somebody who you just trust and they have been your champion for some time, and they have some sense of how they can be helpful, take a chance on it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'll write that down. Yeah, you want to surround yourself with evangelists, people that would do it for free if they could. Some of them will, I think that's where the magic happens, when you surround yourself with a team of people at any stage of your career. If you're just starting off playing your first gig, all the way to, touring full time. All of my favorite managers and artists have done a great job of surrounding themselves with a team of believers. We hired this really big PR firm for a project because they had done a great job on another project of ours, and they didn't do a good job on the second one. And what we found out was we kind of got the B team, and they were a little bit complacent. And it's the same company, just a little bit different team. So I think Steven's spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I think Jay made a really good point, which was your network. And I jokingly tell people a lot of the time that, my job is 90% network, but it really is. It's tapping into people that I've associated myself with over the past several years, and getting to know people and surrounding yourself with like-minded people. You as an artist also need to do that. Someone who's going to be in your wheelhouse all of the time, someone who's going to be able to go out there and really help build a network for you as an artist and for themselves as a professional, and just surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And that's definitely people you want to have on your team, is people who are going to be there for you and really help build everything that you're doing. And like you said, have that evangelical mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I would add to that really quickly is that it depends on the team. You can have a team that's a solid team, but you want people who understand what you're doing and what you're all about. There are certain publicity firms and radio firms we will hire for jazz, which is different than EDM, and it's different than country, and it's different than Americana. You want people who not only can do the job, but people who understand the subtle nuances of these different genres and moods of music, because there's a big difference. You know, what is rock, right? Is that Metallica? Is that rock? Or is it, you know, the Beatles? So there's so many different kind of subgenres and specialists out there that I think that as you're choosing your team, if you're, you know, an Americana act and you want somebody who understands those festivals and those publicity outlets and those partnerships, can you eventually broaden from there? Absolutely. But I think early on, you really need to have someone who understands and gets you.
So I'm definitely hearing that, and that, you know, it's, yeah, somebody who understands what you're doing, somebody who likes what you're doing, and there's a positive feel there, and I think, you know, going with your gut and a sense of that. What about creative conflict? I mean, you also, you know, I think sometimes you want to bring people on who will challenge your thinking, and who may not just say yes all the time. Can you talk a little about that? Is that important? And if so, how do you sort of assess that versus just, hey, I'm not getting along with this person, right?
Well, the ability to stay honest in this role is essential. You're not doing anybody any favors if you're holding things back. And then, you know, if my suspicion proves out and I didn't say anything, then what good have I done? But it's such an intimate relationship between artist and management that, at least in my experience, you know, you really, on both sides, you need to feel totally empowered to be completely honest, as uncomfortable as it can be. And, you know, I've been asked, like, how do you give bad news in a situation like that? And honestly, in this role, there's more bad news than there is good. You get 10 no's for every yes, at least. And that's if you're doing all right. But there's generally a practical reason why you're getting no. It's very rarely because they don't like you as a person. There's just generally something else that either you haven't done yet, or they've got somebody else in mind for it. But I think it's really important that, like, where creative control is, that's, you know, and there are limits to that. Certainly if an artist, if I've been working for them for years and they want to try something totally different and new, I'm always going to support that piece of it. Right. But, you know, we're still going to do everything we can to try to navigate that, to make sure that it's still something that's ultimately successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you build trust by being honest. We call it breathing your own exhaust. We don't do it. If you want someone to tell you what you want to hear, then you need to go somewhere else, because we're very honest about every aspect of the business. And sometimes it's not what people want to hear. You know, we had a client last week talk about ROI, and we just said point blank, there is no ROI in music. Let it go. If you spent this much money recording your EP, there's no guarantees, you know, on it. This is the music industry, you know? Right. So we explained to him, look, you have to look at the business. It's not just, it's 85% of our business right now is streaming, but for every million streams you get, that's give or take $3,000 to $5,000 paid to the rights holder, not to you, right? So there's very little revenue in sales streams and downloads. Can people, the Taylor Swifts and Adeles of the world make a killing? Yeah, absolutely. Developing artists, it's good to be on every DSP globally, so you're out there and you're exposed to people. So there's a value to that. But as far as commerce goes, we tell them brutally, you have to look at things like merch and experiences and sync licenses and touring, and it can't be all about sales streams and downloads anymore. And people don't like to hear that. But the last thing I'll say, and on my caffeinated rant, is that when you talk to people in different genres, they have different goals. So you can't use the same blueprint for a jazz artist that you can a rock. For example, some of my jazz clients, they care about butts in the seats. They care about accolades. They don't really care that much about, sales streams and downloads. They'll sell some, at the merch table and sign some and things, but that's not their primary goal. But then you talk to some of the new singer-songwriters, and they're all about their social footprint, and they're all about their streaming numbers. So, just to wrap this up in a bow, I just think you have to be honest. And when you are brutally honest, then I think you get that respect. And, sometimes you have uncomfortable conversations, but you never want to sugarcoat it.
Mhm. Oh, that's great. Holly, any thoughts on that?
I don't know if she's.
Yeah, we might. It looks like Holly might have froze there.
What a great place to freeze, though.
Exactly.
It looks like
Every time
it looks
freeze,
like
I'm
a
like,
pretty
"Whoa."
portrait.
Right.
Man, all mine when they freeze, it's like my eyes are half shut.
Right.
Man, if you're gonna have it freeze, Holly, that's the one you want to freeze
way
at.
to do it. Yeah. I've got a question from the chat I want to get to, but
before we move on, I would just say this one thing. Sorry, very quickly. I would just say that if you're establishing a relationship with a prospective manager or anybody else for that matter, if you routinely find yourselves on opposite sides in discussions, then it's not a good fit. You should. It's not something that you have to really fight to make work. You should be aligned for the most part from the jump. So that's something.
Good point.
Keep an eye on.
Yeah, well said, right? But but it's not just this Pollyanna yes all the time. But exactly. Point taken. And are there any nuances or other things that you would talk about if we're talking about roles that I'm thinking graphic design, producer, some stuff where there may be a little bit more creative give and take about the thing itself? I mean, is there any different discussion, or is it really the same thing? It's about honesty. It's about mostly being on the same page.
You can't get 5 people to agree on where to go to lunch, let alone what the creative should be, right? So what we do is we create kind of this ecosystem where at the end of the day, the artist makes the call because they have to live with it for the rest of their lives, right? You don't. You're working 30 releases or
Right.
careers, and they're working 1. So starting with that, we do have people who are professional graphic designers. They know what pops. When you look at an album cover the size of a postage stamp on your phone, they know what pops a little bit and how to use white space and creatively. And maybe you don't need the artist's name and title on the artwork since it's listed right below it on every DSP anyway, little things like that. But once you have that professional start, then a lot of it's so subjective with creative, and that is the music, it's the banner sets, it's the videos, it's all of that stuff. But we find if you have one person who you make your recommendations to, someone's got to make that call. And in my mind, that's typically the artist in tandem with the manager.
Yeah. And since you asked about producers specifically, I would mention that that's a really delicate relationship as well, because when you get into the studio, it goes one of 2 ways. It's either the most fun thing ever, or it's a slog. And the producer can play a really important part in that. Sometimes bands just, they can have their own issues, and there's nothing a producer can do to help that. But they can really set the tone for how it's going in the studio. They can really I've seen producers take great bands into the studio and ruin what they were doing. A band that had been playing live 150 nights a year, just everything was super tight, and then they got into the studio and just tried to fundamentally change every single arrangement over the course of 2 weeks. And it was not good. And that's really on the producer. They had a vision that they were more interested in making their record than the band's record. And
Right.
so just be honest with yourself and really ask those questions and make sure that the person that you're going in with, makes records that you really like. Because if, again, this is something where like the person can have a lot of credits to their name, but if you don't like what they're doing, it's not going to be different because it's you. It's, you know, you plant corn, you get corn.
Well said. Holly, welcome back. We lost you for a second, but glad you're back in. We were talking about this last topic, sort of are there nuances around well, I guess creative conflict we were talking about is, you know, what are you looking for, you know, folks that mostly agree with you, or how do you get folks that are going to tell you sort of the hard truth? But then are there nuances if you're looking for roles that are really going to be directly involved in the creative output? You know, is that any different from the business conversation, so to speak? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the relationship between management and artists, it's everything you guys have already said, which is it's very personal. There's an expectancy of trust that has to happen between both sides. And in terms of, you know, working with artists, my motto is, you know, I'm not a yes person. I'm not going to be the person that is going to just agree with everything the artist does, knowing that there are different, like Jay so wonderfully said earlier, nuances around different types of genres. Knowing what works for pop artists is different from, you know, a rock artist and things like that. But it is a collaboration. It is that so the quote unquote marriage that you have with your artist that's really important, and it's built on honesty and trust and being just truthful 100% of the time. But also, you know, what Steven said too about working with producers, especially, is, you know, it's a bit different there, and it really is. You know, you are working with different producers who are really working. You want them to work towards a sound that works for you, and that doesn't always happen. And you really have to find the right producers who are not going to take what you had and ruin it. You want them to build upon what you already have as an artist. And yeah, all those things are really important.
Great. I want to circle back in a little bit to the question about what are you all looking for from a client? So sort of when, you know, what does a client have to demonstrate for you to take them on? But I want to get to this question in the chat first, which is essentially, you know, what are the big roles? So what do each of you think about, you know, say what are the top 5 spots that you ought to fill first? And that may vary a little bit. But yeah, I'll turn it over to you all to share your thoughts.
Yeah, I think where we start is there's kind of what we call the big 4, right? And that's the artist manager, the lawyer, the music business lawyer, number 2, number 3, booking agent, and number 4, tour manager. The rest kind of fall into a bucket that we just call the release cycle, right? Because you're not going to typically need a publicist year round, year after year after year, right? There are artists that do that, but that's at a whole nother level. So things like, and I'll just go through, I made a little list here of some of our release cycle kind of team members or points. And keep in mind that some of these functions can be done by people in the band. Sometimes one person may take on 2 or 3 of these roles, but I'll just go through a few of them. So we talked about publicists. There's social media. A lot of our artists have a social media manager, someone who will even post in their voice, create a content calendar, you know, look at the data on the backside and see what's working, what's not working. It's not just as simple as just posting. Graphic designer, you mentioned, photographer, videographer, you know, those are things that you'll need. And you may do some of those things in-house. But I can tell you as a professional photographer, there's a big difference between shooting some things with your iPhone and going into a studio and having a professional shoot by a professional. You know, video editors are so important today because we're putting out so much quote unquote content. I hate that word, but if we don't just put out a video, we're putting out a 15-second version of that. We're doing an 8-second canvas. We're doing a 30-second. You need someone who's going to be able to grab those pieces because
pieces,
if someone's
yeah.
flipping through their feed, you've got 2 seconds to grab their attention, and a good video editor can do that. And I won't read the entire list, but I just want to give you a couple of other ones that I think are important. You get to a point where you want somebody focusing on sync licensing, because that can be huge for some bands, right? Online advertising today, it used to be you'd have to hire somebody like Gupta Media, Dash 2, Gary Group, whatever. Today, with all these tools like, Tone Den and Foundy, and just, your own Facebook, you can go in and place your own advertising, targeted advertising surrounding a tour or around a release. And the last thing I'll say about it is you need someone who's looking at the data. It's so crucial, because everybody thinks they know who their audience is. And I can tell you from experience, they know about 3/4 of who their audience is, because there's 3 audiences, just really quickly. You've got your commerce, sales, streams, and downloads. You got your touring, the butts and the seats. And then the third one, you have your socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And when you look at that data, they don't always align, because people standing from the stage will look out and they go, oh, well, my audience is 35-year-old women. But that may not be who the commerce side is or on the social side. So the last thing I'll say on that is just, it's so important to have somebody on your team whose job it is, once a week, go in and take a look at the data. Are there spikes? Are you underperforming, overperforming? What's your competition doing? That sort of thing.
Because there is all this tremendous data, right? You could be creating all this great content and putting out these interesting posts, but that's a great point. Like part of the power of the platforms is all the data that you get back on the streaming side, the social side, everything else.
Right.
And yeah, and that may not be comfortable territory for your typical creative, right? So
yeah,
it's a really interesting point.
It sounds pedantic, but you do more of what works and less of what doesn't.
Sure.
And I'm not being a smart ass. I'm just saying that that's what you have to do. Find those things where you're overperforming and just double down, do more of those things.
That's great. Holly, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%, especially when it comes to data and analytics. That's something that when even within the past year, a lot of what we've seen with clients who come our way, or at least just artists who've come our way, that's been a huge selling point for us with going about our, business in the music industry. Is that's something we as a management team do focus on. We take the time to really go in and look at these artists and look at their data and see what's working, what's not working, and really make that a point to, our artists. They're creative minds, so they don't really care too much about the data, but we do, because everything we do can be structured around that data, looking at their social and their commerce and everything. And it's really great. But I agree that the big 4 on your team as well, having a manager, a lawyer, huge, having a business lawyer. If I were to throw a 5th in there, I'd go business manager, but you really have to kind of be at a particular level to bring in
Agreed.
a business manager.
Yeah.
Before I got into artist management, I was in business management, so I can speak from that background too. But no, I agree with everything.
Yeah,
that's great, Steve. Yeah,
all good points. The only thing I would say is that Caitlin, depending on where you are in your career, a lot of these are luxuries. Like a tour manager is absolutely a luxury. Somebody who can handle that for you. So really, you have to sort of build out, you have to consider what you're good at, what you can take on yourself, and where you need help. I've worked with some artists who have self-managed, who are great at it, who can go out there and are just on it. And if their careers as musicians were to dry up, they could jump into management with both feet and do great work. So it really depends on what you're good at, what you're comfortable with, how comfortable you are with advocating for yourself and what you need to get out of things. And all of the roles are really important, but you really just, it really depends on what your individual needs are.
Yeah, Stephen, I think that's really, really important. You just touched on something. I've got 2 artists right now that are on the road touring, and the tour manager is a member of the band, and they're killing it. They're doing a really good job. So not everybody's a great tour manager, right? But it is a luxury. It costs money to keep people out on the road and hotels and feeding them and all of that stuff. The only thing I wanted to add just really quickly on data is there are a few places I would suggest people go. So you're not looking at Facebook analytics, Spotify for artists, Apple Music for, I mean, you're not looking at all these different sources, although you can and gain insights. But if you want something quick where you can see everything in one dashboard, I have 3 data sources that I absolutely love. One is Chartmetric. Check that out. They actually have a free version. I've been a fan and helped them many, many years ago. The other one is one out of Slovenia called Viberate, which is just fantastic. And it's really more on the touring side. They have a lot of info on venues. And then the last one is Sound Charts. So if you're looking for data on your bands, competitive bands, you want to see how you stack up, you want to see what like competitive artists are, you know, maybe what kind of rooms they're playing, what the cap is, check out those services. Again, I think Chartmetric is the only one with a free version. I could be wrong, but they're not super expensive, and trust me, they will pay for themselves.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks. So yeah, just to remind everybody watching, please feel free to put your questions in the chat if you're on the Zoom platform. If you're watching on Facebook, we're keeping an eye on the comments as well. Great discussion so far. So you started to touch on this, but as an artist, then I guess, what are you looking for? So okay, so somebody says, hey, I think I want to get an attorney, or I want to hire you to do my management, or whatever I'm looking for. The artist has to maybe be at a certain level before you're going to take them on. What are some of the things that you all are looking for, you know, that other of your colleagues are looking for?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, something that both I think Stephen and Holly touched on, and that is, you know, are you at that point in your career where you're serious about this as a full-time thing and you're doing it? And B, do you have the revenue for it? Because it costs money. And I remember having a conversation with an artist manager who said, you know, I love label and artist services. I know, I see what you can do, but I'm not going to pay you. There's not a lot of revenue in this business, and there's a lot of people who want to take a chunk. So I think it has to be something that's going to grow your revenue, right? A good publicist is going to grow your revenue. You know, a good booking agent is going to grow your revenue. Some of these other things are kind of a nice to have, especially for a developing artist. And that's where that street team, you know, your super fans, your evangelists, they can do that sort of thing for free. I mean, we've all worked for great artists for free for a while because we want to see them succeed. So I would just say it'll become abundantly clear when you're doing this full time and you're bogged down in some of this social media or booking or some of these other things. At some point, you have to say, wait, time out. We need a pro.
Sure. Yeah, I think every manager over time sort of develops a checklist that that we keep handy, and you know, all of this assumes that your art is excellent. You know, right. If that's what you're doing, first and foremost, make sure that you're getting to that benchmark.
Sure.
You know, pardon my French. I always tell people, like, you have to be holy shit good before you have any chance of really succeeding at all in this. If you have people coming up to you after your shows with that sort of befuddled expression on their face,
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah,
I love that.
Then you got a shot at it. Beyond that,
that's sort of the baseline. You're saying
that's the baseline.
Like, yeah, that's your
table stakes.
At this point, then you're special like everyone else, and so now let's talk.
Exactly. Now can I stand to be in a room with you?
Yeah.
You know, all of the other things come into play now.
Right.
So there are lots of other things, but that's the bar that has to be cleared first and foremost.
I like that a lot. I think, you know, today there's, you know, about 70,000 tracks uploaded every day to the DSPs, almost 500,000 a week. To rise above that, and the other part of it is, let's say you're an artist and now you're doing well locally or regionally. When you put your music on the DSPs, you're right alongside, you know, Taylor Swift and Katy Perry and Drake. You got to be buttoned up. And to Stephen's point, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that holy shit thing. I was talking to an A&R guy the other day, and I asked him how he signed artists. You know, what data platforms does he use? And he's like, I look for a lineup around the block. That's what I look for.
Yeah.
And that's the old school thing that I think Steven's referring to is we've got all this data and we've got people who can blow up on TikTok or be on The Voice or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily make a long career. You want someone who just is jaw dropping, and we've all seen those moments. I don't know how it manifests itself. It might be the hair on your arm goes up or whatever,
Yeah.
Exactly. And but you know it when it's the real deal. And you tell your friends about it, you post about it on social media. Look at my social media, you'll see the artists that I am just crazy about, that I can't wait to see, and then I buy everything they do. And I couldn't agree with Stephen more. It's that holy shit, I'm gonna get a t-shirt made.
I love it. Holly, how about you? What are your thoughts here? I see you nodding.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you guys have said so far is, I would say, I know for myself and my team, it's that paired with an artist understanding that what they're doing is a business. It's not just a hobby, that's conversations I've had before with artists, which is they're like, I need a manager and I need this, this, and this. And, we sift through that and we kind of see through that. And we're like, you look like you have a glorified hobby. You don't look like an artist, or you don't, to us, aren't showing us the work behind it. You're just showing us that you can make some music. And that's definitely something my team and we emphasize with anybody that we talk to, is like, yes, of course, there's a lot of talented people in the world and we want to hear as much talent as we possibly can, but we also want to see the work that goes into it. And if you're a DIY artist who can do both and can show up and do both, that's really something we look for.
Yeah, that's a great
Love that.
I always say that I'm not going to work harder than my artists at it. And if I'm dragging you along and just trying, there are things that I'm going to need you to do. And if I ask you to do them and it's not getting done, we've got a problem.
Yeah, we have a similar thing, Stephen. We say we can't want it more than the artist does.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we've had artists like that you show up and they're just mailing it in. They don't want to, they'll blow off PR things. They're just, no, we got to have somebody. You're so fortunate to be able to do that for a living. You need to roll up your sleeves and do it.
The most important letter in DIY is the D.
Yeah.
Dude, somebody's got to get stuff done, right?
He's got to do the stuff.
Yeah.
I hope somebody's writing these things down as Stephen says them.
Recording.
Okay, good.
Right, exactly. We'll be able to go pull all these great pearls of wisdom out. You all are providing great insights. Thank you again for being here. Couple more things before we wrap up. One of the things is we were obviously sharing some thoughts in a document as we're getting ready for this. There was some discussion of goals, and you all mentioned some of that in the conversation about getting started with an artist or an artist approaching you about what they're wanting to do. But can we back up a step and talk about artists setting goals and what kind of things would you recommend? I mean, someone may have the dream and aspiration and whatever, but how do we turn that into something concrete? And what
we had that conversation just earlier today. Funny you should say that, because every single artist we work with, every manager, we have a plan that's individual, and there are goals in each one, realistic goals. We had this earlier today. This artist manager said, I want to be on New Music Friday. Oh, okay, that's a interesting goal. Number one, why? You're not in there very long, but let's just say, what other artists at your artist level are in there? And there were none. You need to have realistic goals. And I do think it's good to have goals in every aspect, like what cap room are you going to play? How much merch do you want to sell? And then to Holly's point, this is the music business, right? And so you have to have financial goals and you have to have career goals. And I think it's great to put those down, because then you can have the conversations and see, how did that campaign go? Where did we fall down? What did we overachieve? And those are the healthy conversations, and those guide you to be realistic with your goals.
Yeah, I think Jay, you said it perfectly. The word I was thinking was realistic, and helping artists understand that, sure, they want to collaborate and feature with some of these, really A-list artists, and that's great, but is that realistic to what you're doing right now as an artist? And that's again something I've dealt with clients, and I know colleagues of mine and then also opportunities as well. And a lot of times we get artists who come to us who say, I want to play shows. It's like, great, everyone wants to play shows, but there's more to your career than that. And that's where we start to line up those goals and understand what those are. Sync is another one. That's a big one we get walking through the door is, I really want to get sync placements, and I really want to get my movie or my music in movies and stuff like that. So being realistic in those aspirations is really what an artist needs to focus on.
It's great. Steve?
Yeah, I think that really that's the foundation of these relationships, is understanding what your artist is working towards and developing a map to get you there. And Holly, you made a great point. Like, everybody wants to play festivals and get their music in syncs. And I saw something, I guess it was a couple of years ago, but it was like the Coachella poster, but instead of having bands, it was all of the agencies that booked the bands.
I saw that. That was so good.
Paradigm, William Morris, all of it. And then here's a little high road, here's ground control. But these are hyper competitive things that you're looking for. And it's really, for syncs to happen, the alignment that has to come into play is just nuts. Really, there's very little of it that you can control. I mean, sure, you can do all you can to track down music supervisors, make sure that they see the music that your artists have, and you really don't ever want to waste somebody's time. So make sure that there is alignment, you're sending them something that you honestly think is a good fit for what they're doing. I always say that I can't reach out to somebody and ask them to listen to something if I don't 100% believe that they need to listen to this thing. I don't want to waste their time, and it's not doing anybody any good. But I think goals, it's not just professional, because there are a lot of personal elements. Some people, want to have, I have artists who have kids, and they're like, look, I can't be gone for more than 5 days at a time because I have to come back, and that's really important to me. And so I have to understand that and look for opportunities that maximize the windows that we have. So, making sure that they're fulfilled in those other areas of their lives is just as important as making sure that all of the music-y, businessy stuff is handled.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, in many industries, music needs to be no exception. We talk about that work-life integration. That's got to happen. As you were talking about those artists coming in going, hey, I want to do this, I want to be here. Fair to say it's still okay to have that dream.
Absolutely.
But then let's break down real concrete goals to get you from here to there.
Absolutely.
Don't lose sight of that. But that's maybe not goal one. That needs to be how we build to that. And I'll just chime in and mention that there are lots of formats for this, but a really common one is the SMART goal, right? Which covers a lot of what you guys have mentioned: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And if you sit down and try to put those things together, that can be a helpful format. So I'll just throw that in. We got a great question across Facebook. We have a young artist who says, I'm 15, really modest, work really hard, and getting people reaching out, presumably online. If you're posting on YouTube, every once in a while you get somebody who reaches out who's offering to help take you to the next level, but being cautious about that. Any advice for somebody that's getting that, hey, we can bring you to Nashville and take you on a tour and show you and make you the next
gonna make you a star, kid.
Yeah, we're gonna make you a star. Yeah. Talk about that a little.
I would just do the research. If somebody approaches you, beware of pay for play, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, just do your research. Google them, look on LinkedIn, talk to, if they represent other artists, reach out to those other artists. Hey, what do you think about this? Is this smart? Is this a good move? If you've got the internet, at your fingertips, you can vet somebody yourself pretty quickly and find out if they're legit or not. Look at their email address. Are they from a company, or is it, from, a Gmail account? There's a lot of things, a lot of red flags you can look for.
I have a Gmail account.
That's why I don't return your calls.
I know. That's fine.
No.
I would say too, something that when I was in grad school, one of my professors said that really stuck with me was, maybe you get past that phase of your initial search of okay, look this person up, I kind of know who they are. it's really about looking at the projects they've worked on, looking at the people they've worked with, who they're connected. I mean, LinkedIn, go see who they're connected with on LinkedIn. But one of the big things too is, okay, maybe you are ready to sit down with this person. The goal is to know who you're walking into the room with, and what they're probably going to expect of you. Obviously, you can't always determine what somebody's gonna, want from you, but going into the mindset, like, I know who this person is, I know what they worked on before, and knowing what basically what leverage you're able to bring to the table as well. It's like, why do they want you? Why do they want my music? Why do they want me to show up and bring all this, materials with me? And knowing the person sitting across the table is something that's really beneficial, especially when it gets down to the negotiation phase.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. And I would, I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
go ahead. No,
I was
please
just
go
going to
ahead,
say, just really quickly, I would recommend that people, like I said at the beginning, nobody wants to give you a job. Everybody wants to give you advice. If someone's reaching out to you, reach out to other people in that, whoever that position is. Maybe it's an artist manager or a booking agent or whoever it is, a record company. Reach out to some legit people there and say, hey, look, I'd love to get your advice. I'm a new developing artist. 9 times out of 10, they'll ping you back and help you out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great suggestion.
I would just, there are a couple warning signs that I would consider. Anybody who's asking for money up front, that's usually a pretty good sign that they're not legit. I've also looked at a lot of contracts for people who were pretty young and things that were framed as, we want to give you a publishing deal. And as I read through it, they made it sound like it's a partnership. They said, well, make sure that you always get 50% of your mechanical royalties.
Oh my
All you
goodness.
have to do is assign us copyright, and we take 100% of your publishing in perpetuity. They own the song. They're basically like taking your music and owning it. And then if something happens, you would get basically 25% of the revenue.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. So things that are framed as publishing deals, it was really disheartening to see that these people are out there, and like, you look on their websites and sure enough, there are no shortage of artists who have gone in with these folks, and it just, it's a bummer to think that this is where they landed.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, if someone's asking you to pay up front, then their risk is low, and if they happen to strike gold and get 75% of your revenue, then right. So no, and all of you mentioned, one of your very early team members to bring on as a professional is a music business lawyer. So it sounds like this underscores that situation for sure. So if it sounds too good to be true, watch out. If they're looking for money up front, watch out, and then make sure you've got a good lawyer to look at anything before you sign it.
Yeah. I would say, especially with the pay to play stuff, especially with playlisting, that's a huge one right now. I get emails like coming through my inbox as like, it's Spotify for artists saying we want to curate one of your songs for our playlist, and you read the email and it's like, that's not from Spotify. So and then that's the other thing too, with streaming, that organic growth, like pay to play, just don't do it. Avoid it.
Yeah, don't do it. Anything that likes, spins, follows, don't do it. It'll get you pulled off of Spotify. In January, they pulled off tens of thousands of songs because they were using bots and spin farms and those sorts of things. So I couldn't agree with you more, Holly. We talk about it on the podcast every week. Do not buy any spins. They can't get you on any DSP curated playlists. Some of them have a network of user curators, and there are some legitimate places out there where they'll submit it for an opinion. But if they tell you, I'll get you this many spins for this much money, run the other direction.
It's the guarantee, the guaranteed plays kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Avoid it like the plague.
Yeah,
I've used Playlist Push and had it work out pretty well. That's a
Playlist Push, Submit Hub. There are a few of these that can help you out. Songfluencer, some of these, but do your homework. Email, text me. I'll tell you who some of these bad guys and some of the good guys are. But it's really dangerous for people who buy any of this stuff. It can harm your career. Trust me.
Yeah, and if you do get a typo-filled email from Spotify.biz, do not click any links.
What?
Watch out. Yeah, watch out. Just good old standard email caution. No, great question. Thanks for that. I'm conscious of time. We should probably start wrapping up. I want to thank all of you again for joining. I think your advice and insight has been invaluable. We know that that working in the music industry is really difficult and takes a ton of time. So we certainly don't take for granted the fact that you were all willing to give up an hour plus some prep time to be with us today. So thank you all so much for doing that. I will ask if there are any parting thoughts that you want to share with our audience or folks that are viewing in later.
I would just say this: if you're starting off, being on time and saying thank you and following up with venues, anything that you can do to handle this as professionally as you possibly can goes a long way. If I'm putting in a room, if I see, even if turnout isn't great, if I saw that you were posting about the show a lot online, if you were really doing all you could to get people there, if you showed up on time, you were, you just handled yourself politely to the staff, you thank the sound guy from the stage, always a good idea. Send a note to the buyer afterwards. Thanks for giving me a shot at this. I'm glad it worked out, or I'm sorry that it didn't work out as well as we thought, but I'd still love to be considered for future stuff. Just all of that stuff helps immensely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with it more. I have a couple of artists that keep, well, actually 3 of them that keep a spreadsheet of everybody they meet on the road, whether it's at a radio station, TV station, venue, whatever. They know that, oh, Steven's birthday is coming up, and they send him a little birthday message. I mean, those kinds of relationships and follow through, like to what Steven said, even if you didn't fill the room, they would rather have you back because you're so cool to work with than somebody who was a jerk or somebody who didn't drive traffic. So words of advice. That's great.
Well, sorry, last thing, and I don't mean to talk over, but one of the things that we've seen that really does help a lot with venues is artists will make personalized videos for them to post on their socials. Like, hey, I'm Matthew Fowler. I'm going to be playing at Rockwood Room 3 on whatever date. And we'd love it if you came out and like have your music in the background, like something like that.
Oh, great
a
idea.
long way. And it just really just do all you can to make it a great experience on there.
Doesn't cost anything to be nice.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
I'll
I'd say if you're an artist who really wants to do this 110%, and I say 110, but I mean like 150. Don't get discouraged. You're going to hear a lot of no's. You're going to hear a lot of, we're not interested right now. We're going to, those kind of things. That usually means something better is going to come on, the way I look at it anyway. So try not to get discouraged. You are going to have those hiccups, but it's how you overcome those hiccups that really help you as an artist and as a creative. And the other thing I wanted to mention was just everything that these guys have already said, which is be kind, be professional, and just really be thankful with everyone that you work with, and really just go out there and put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, Steve, you were talking about sort of the baseline as being incredibly good at this, and one of the differentiators may well be then just how professional, how kind do people want to work with you, right? Because if you go, well, I got 5 artists here that are all amazing. How about the one that's the best to work with, right? So I think that's,
absolutely.
Yeah, point well taken.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you all so much for your time. Incredible advice here. As you said, I want to go back and watch this again and write down all these pearls of wisdom that you all shared. And I hope that all of our audience members feel the same way. Thanks again to Michigan Music Alliance for putting this on. And we hope to see you again at the next session, which is on building a brand. So check out Michigan Music Alliance on Facebook, and you'll get a schedule of the upcoming B-side sessions. Thank you all again. Hope you have a good evening.
Thank you. Do the same.
Thank you.
Take
Nice
care,
meeting
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Bye.